She sank her teeth in and growled, "Mine. Now even aliens won't come near." The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the third time this cycle, and Ambassador Zexthul could feel his crystalline appendages vibrating with nervous energy. The holographic displays showed the same troubling data that had been plaguing the Outer Rim colonies for months. Complete radio silence from Kepler 442b, the latest human settlement. "The pattern is consistent," announced High Counselor Vrath, her tentacles writhing as she gestured toward the star charts. "Every species that has attempted to investigate the human colony has disappeared. The Velkari scout ships, the Thraxian diplomatic envoys, even our most advanced ethereal surveillance drones. Nothing returns." The assembled representatives from 47 different species murmured their concerns in a cacophony of clicks, hums, and telepathic whispers. Humans had been part of the galactic community for barely 50 years, yet they had already established a reputation for being unpredictable. "Perhaps," suggested Ambassador Quintar of the Hegemony, his insectoid features clicking disapprovingly, "we should simply declare the system quarantined. Mark it as a navigational hazard and be done with it." "Unacceptable," Zexthul interjected, his voice resonating through his crystalline throat. "My people have significant mining interests in that sector. We cannot simply abandon an entire system because humans have gone silent." What none of them knew was that Dr. Sarah Chen had not gone silent by choice. 3 months earlier, Sarah had been the chief xenobiologist for the Kepler colony, a thriving settlement of 12,000 humans, who had been working alongside their alien neighbors in apparent harmony. She had dedicated her life to fostering understanding between species, learning their languages, studying their cultures, and building bridges across the vast differences that separated them. That was before the Harbingers arrived. The shadow creatures had swept through the Outer Rim like a plague, consuming entire worlds and leaving nothing but empty husks of planets in their wake. Sarah had watched helplessly as her alien colleagues, friends she had worked with for years, were drained of their life force, their bodies crumbling to ash as the Harbingers fed. She had run through the colony's corridors as the creatures poured. In like living darkness, their forms shifting and writhing as they sought out every living being. Sarah had found herself cornered in the research lab, surrounded by the corpses of beings she had called friends, when something inside her snapped. The first harbinger that reached for her encountered something it had never faced before. A human, backed into a corner with nothing left to lose. Sarah's teeth had sunk into the creature's shadowy flesh, if it could be called flesh, and she had tasted something that burned like acid and electricity. But instead of releasing her grip, she had clamped down harder, growling a single word through her clenched jaw. "Mine." The effect had been instantaneous and terrifying. The Harbinger's shriek had echoed not just through the air, but through dimensions, a sound of pure agony that sent ripples across space-time itself. Sarah had felt the creature's essence flowing into her, its alien knowledge and power burning through her nervous system like molten metal. When she finally released her grip, the Harbinger was gone. Not dead, but absorbed, integrated into her, being in a way that defied every law of physics she had ever studied. The remaining Harbingers had retreated, their collective consciousness recognizing something that they had never encountered in millions of years of conquest. A predator that could consume them as easily as they consumed others. But Sarah's transformation was far from over. Each day that passed, she felt herself changing, becoming something that was neither fully human nor fully alien. Her senses expanded beyond normal human perception, allowing her to detect approaching ships from light years away. Her body began to adapt, growing stronger, faster, more resilient than any baseline human had a right to be. Most importantly, she had developed an aura, a psychic emanation that carried a simple, primal message to any alien consciousness that came within range. "This place is claimed. This place is defended. Come closer and become part of me." The first Velkari scouts had approached the system with standard diplomatic protocols, their ship's AI broadcasting messages of peace and cooperation. They had made it as far as the asteroid belt before their ship's crew began experiencing what their final transmission had described as overwhelming predatory pressure and the certainty of consumption. Their ship had turned around and accelerated out of the system at maximum burn, but they never made it to the jump point. The last signal detected from their vessel had been a single word repeated over and over in perfect Velkari. "Mine, mine, mine." The Thraxian envoys had been next, approaching with military escorts and full battle readiness. Their heavily armed dreadnought had lasted exactly 17 minutes in the system before its crew began reporting hallucinations of being hunted, stalked by something that existed in the spaces between thoughts. They had retreated as well, only to vanish somewhere, in the void between stars. Each failed contact attempt had only strengthened Sarah's reputation throughout the galaxy. She had become something beyond human classification, a guardian that had claimed an entire star system as her territory and would defend it against all comers. In the Galactic Council chambers, the debate continued, but Zexthul noticed that fewer and fewer representatives were willing to volunteer their ships for reconnaissance missions. The humans' silence had become more effective than any weapon or diplomatic threat they had ever deployed. "Perhaps," High Counselor Vrath said quietly, her tentacles now still with resigned understanding, "we should simply respect their desire for privacy." The motion passed unanimously. Back on Kepler 442b, Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the colony's central tower, watching the sunset paint the alien sky in shades of gold and crimson. The 12,000 human colonists below continued their lives, unaware that their xenobiologist had become their guardian, their protector, their monster. She could feel the approaching ships even now. More scouts, more diplomats, more curious aliens drawn by the mystery of the silent system. And she smiled, feeling something vast and hungry stirring in the depths of her transformed consciousness. "Mine," she whispered to the empty air, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, ships began to change course, their crews suddenly, eager to be anywhere else in the galaxy. The humans of Kepler 442b were no longer part of the galactic community. They were something far more dangerous. They were protected,